Hello and welcome to the Stamperia Sir Vagabond and Fantasy World tutorial series designed for Scrap and Create. All of these products that are available on the Scrap and Create website are linked in the description box below, so you can purchase these products and follow along. Let's get into the tutorial. In today's tutorial, we are going to begin decorating page 2. So this is the image I'm going to use on the front. This is cut from the 12 by 12 papers. I'm going to be placing this in the center, but I'm first going to cut one piece here, use my decorative edge die, and then I'll cut this into two pieces. So from this 8 by 8 paper, I first cut a piece that measures 2 inches by 5 3/4. Then I've actually cut this into two pieces. This is 1 1/8. This one is 7/8 of an inch. I'm going to set the 7/8 of an inch piece aside. For this one here, I'm going to use my decorative edge die on this right edge. So I will be lining the scalloped edge up with the edge of my paper and then making sure that it is centered. And I'm going to run this through my die cutting machine. Once I have this piece, I'm going to cut a 1/2 inch off of my left-hand side. You should have two pieces like this. So this piece will go here. Then we'll have our card, and then we will have this piece here. Now I'm actually going to take my scissors. I could use my paper cutter for this too. But I'm just going to trim just a little bit of this white off on this side. I want there to be a little bit of a space between my decorative paper and that card, and that white is pretty bright next to that black paper. So I'm going to just try to reduce it a little bit. Once I'm happy with this, I'm going to go ahead and adhere all 3 of these pieces down. Once I have those pieces on, I'm going to open my flap. I have my set of magnets here that I'm going to place on my page. Now I'm going to place it here in the center, but just like on the first page, I want to make sure that it's not too close to that edge. But I'm going to be using this piece to cover my magnet, and I need to make sure that it's going to cover completely. So I don't want it to be too far over this way. So from the edge of my page, or my edge here, to the center of my magnet is about a 1/2 inch. I'm going to take, before I put my second magnet on, I'm going to take this piece and I am going to use my decorative edge on the left side. And then I'm going to make sure that this will cover properly before I put that other magnet on, because if I need to move this magnet, now will be the time to do so. So I'm just lining up my scallop with the edge of the page, and I'm going to run this through my die cutting machine. Once I have my piece, I'm going to come back over here and I see where it is. It's covered and there's only a little bit around each side, so I have to make sure that it works, but it does. So I'm going to adhere this down, and then I'm going to place my magnet on the flap. So once my paper is on, I'm going to attach my magnet over top and then go ahead and close to place my magnet here. From this 12 by 12 paper, I've cut from the top left corner a piece that's 4 inches by 5 3/4, and I'm going to place this here as a photo mat. Now from this 8 by 8 paper, I've cut this piece to 4 1/4 by 6 3/4, and I'm going to place this one here to cover this magnet. We're going to come in here and cut this piece next. So from this 8 by 8 paper, we are going to cut a piece to 1 3/4 by 8 inches. And then for here, we're going to cut from this 12 by 12 paper. And this piece measures 4 1/4 by 8 inches. So I'm going to place this one down here. Then I'm going to apply my adhesive to the top and the bottom of this flap, close it to form my pocket, and then I'll adhere this piece down to the front. Next, I'm going to cut a piece for here. So I've taken this 8 by 8 paper and I've cut this piece to 4 1/4 by 5 inches. And I'm going to use my decorative edge die here on this bottom edge. So for this one, I need to make sure that, again, it is centered because it's a smaller piece, and I am centering it now between fewer of these scallops. So once I get this on, you'll see it's between, there's this notch on both sides. Now, once I have this piece, I'm going to adhere it to the front, and then I'm also going to do the same thing for the back side of the flap. So from, it was here, from this 12 by 12 paper, I've cut another piece to 4 1/4 by 5 inches. And on this one, I'm going to use that decorative die on the top edge, and then I'm going to run that through my machine and then adhere it to the top flap. Now my final piece I'm taking from the 8 by 8 paper that we've been using from here. This measures 4 1/4 by 6 3/4, and I'm going to place this here on the bottom portion. Once that's on, I'm going to go ahead and fold up my page. Remember, we'll come back in another video and put our photo mats together for our album, and we'll add some embellishments. So that's it for the front of the page. Now I'm going to start on the back of the page. And the first thing I'm going to do here, I'm just going to take my magnet, going to open up my little band and place my magnet here. And this is about 1/2 inch from the edge to the center. And I'll take my second magnet, and then I will close this. I want to make sure I like the way it's closing. Okay, I think that looks good. So now I've got my magnets placed. I'm going to go ahead and close this, and we'll start cutting our pieces. For the band on the outside and the inside, I have used this piece here. It's the leftover that we had from the back of the page. Now this is cut to 3/4 by 2 3/4. So I'll be placing the darker piece on the front and then the lighter piece on the back side. This is the card from the 12 by 12 that I'm going to be using for the front of my page here. So I had that gray border around the whole thing, but I did cut it off of the sides just to give me a little bit of extra room. For this side over here on the left, I'm going to be using my decorative edge die. So I'm just going to be taking my die, and just like in the previous cuts, I'm going to line this up in the center, and then my scalloped edges are going to be right at the edge of my piece, and I will run this through my die cutting machine. From this 12 by 12 paper, I did cut from the top. I've cut a piece to 10 inches, and it's 5 3/4 inches. And then I've cut 3 pieces. So first it was 10 inches by 5 3/4. I cut a 1/2 inch piece off of the right side, and then I cut 2 of these that are 4 3/4. Now this piece is going to go here, and this is going to go right next to it. And then these 2 pieces are going to be for the fronts of my flaps. So for these, I'm going to take my decorative edge die on the left edges of both pieces, and then I'll run these through my die cutting machine. Before adhering these to the flaps, I do need to cut 1/8 of an inch off of the right hand side. They're just a little bit too big. So once you have your piece, you want to make sure that you place it on your flap first. Depending on how you've cut yours, if you've cut more off than I did, your piece might be fine. But mine actually extended over to the edge, so I've just cut 1/8 of an inch off of both of these. So now I'm going to go ahead and apply all of my papers. From this 8x8 paper, I cut 4 pieces here, and these 4 pieces are 5 3/4 by 1/2 inch. So I cut a piece that's 2 inches by 5 3/4 first, and then I cut this into those 1/2 inch pieces. I've left them in the order that they are in because I'm going to be placing these, this bottom one here, then this next one I'm going to place just above it, and I'm going to need to tuck this up underneath those flaps from the waterfall, but because they are mitered, it will tuck up underneath, so it will look like a continuous pattern, just with that little tiny break with the Kraft paper. Then I have the next one that I'm going to place here, again tucking up under the waterfall flaps. And then the 4th one is going to go here. And it's going to tuck just slightly underneath, because remember that is going to be turned into a pocket. So I'm going to place all 4 of those, and then we're going to come inside and work on the inside flaps. Once those pieces are on, I'm going to go ahead and open this page up and apply a thin line of adhesive down each side of the page to turn this into that deep pocket. Once I have that adhesive on, I'll just go ahead and close this up and make sure that both sides are adhered down. And then I'm going to open up and come here into the back, and we'll cut for here from this 12 by 12 paper. This was down here. This is what the 12 by 12 looks like. And I've cut one piece to 5 3/4 by 4 3/4, I believe. Yep, 4 3/4 by 5 3/4. And this one will go right here. Now there should be a little tiny border on the top and the bottom, but based on where these pieces are, it might not be a very big border. So I'm going to take my paper trimmer and trim just a little tiny sliver off of my paper so that when I bring it in here, there is that little tiny border. I have this 12 by 12 paper. The first 2 are a different size than the 3rd one. So these 2 I've cut, they're 5 3/4 by 4 5/8. So before, when we did the front, I cut them to 4 3/4 and had to trim 1/8 of an inch off. So I've just cut my pieces to 4 5/8. Now, if you cut yours to 4 3/4 and you didn't need to trim them, cut your pieces to 4 3/4. So you're gonna need 2 pieces for that. And then for the top, I've cut one piece to 4 inches by 5 3/4. I'm going to use the decorative edge die on all of these pieces. The smaller piece is going to go here because there is that decorative edge die, or the more decorative one on this one. It's a smaller piece. So I'm going to do it first and use my decorative edge die here, just lining up those scalloped edges with the edge of my paper and then centering it. And I'm going to run this through my die cutting machine for here. Then I'm going to do the same thing for these 2, and I'm going to use my decorative edge die on the right edges there and I'm going to apply these on, and I'll apply this on. Once these pieces are on, the last thing I need to do is cut some strips for in here. So I've taken some of that 8x8 gear paper and I've cut 2 strips to 3/8 of an inch by 5 3/4. Now I'm going to place one here, and it looks like I do need to just slightly trim just a little tiny bit off of that. So I'll place one here, and the second one will be here, and I'll need to trim just a little bit off of this one too. So I'm going to adhere those 2 pieces down to finish the page. Now that everything is covered, we'll go ahead and close up the page. And again, we will add our photo mat or photo booklet, whatever I decide to put back here, later in the final video. So that page is now complete. That's the end of this tutorial. And if you are just joining the tutorial series, check out the links in the description box below for all of the Stamperia Sir Vagabond papers. They are linked to the Scrap and Create website, where you can pick up all these supplies that you need to follow along. I'll see you in the next tutorial.